Hi, I'm Michelle Olivier, and you're listening to Hey, I Want Your Job, the podcast that looks at amazing jobs and what it takes to get them. Welcome to Hey, I Want Your Job. And today I am joined by Tina, who has a job I think that a lot of people don't understand and is changing some important things that people think they understand but don't. And I may be in part of that category. So I am excited to learn today. Tina, that was very ambiguous as an intro. What is your job title?
Well, I'm a CEO. How about
Okay.
that?
Of
That
what?
you understand.
Yes, that part is, yeah, clear.
So first of all, thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. I'm so excited. I love your show.
Thank you.
So I am the co-founder and owner of the Folson Group. We are business consultants, but specifically to homeowners associations. And more specifically, to New York City co-op and condos. We work with boards to increase the property values for the apartments or for the entire property of their buildings in New York. And the way that we do that is that we reduce their cost.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
When I think of what property market really is struggling to maintain its value, New York City does not come high on that list, Tina. When we think about property prices in New York, everybody's like you pay $8 billion for a postage stamp. So help me understand, why do you need to maintain your value in New York? Because again, the whole rest of the world thinks that just like being in New York is already probably more value than you need. So help me understand.
Okay. So what happens whether you own a singular family home, like just an individual house in Kansas City, nothing against Kansas City, or you own a you own a single home in a gated community in Florida or something, or Texas, or you own a share or an apartment in a building. The way that you increase property value is by paying less. So your monthly dues, no matter how you live, are directly related. The less you pay on a monthly basis, the higher property value. So it's like anything else, whether you're a business owner or just on a personal level, you want to pay as little as possible on an ongoing basis. And that increases either your personal net worth, because you can save more, or it increases the property value in all of those people who own either an apartment or a house. But one of the things is that co-op and condo or homeowners association, no matter where they're located in the United States, they're run by a third-party property manager who manages the day-to-day, the bookkeeping basically, and make sure that the building is in compliance with building codes, etc. And then some of the residents, they are nonprofit board members, they're volunteers, and they don't have maybe that much knowledge about how buildings are run. So that's where we come in. So we're consultants, just like McKinsey and Company is a consultant for large corporations. These smaller organizations, they can't afford to hire McKinsey and Company. So they hire us, and we specialize in apartment buildings.
Got it. Okay, so you guys serve as like the property management guys who come in and you oversee that element of it so that you keep costs low, etc.
Yes, but we don't do what the property manager does. The property manager makes sure that everybody's paying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also make sure that any vendors that they hire. So when they pay the plumber, the property manager is actually the entity that pays them. They also take a lot of complaints. We don't take complaints. And that's why you want my job.
I would love a job with no complaints ever. That would be amazing. I'm not going to lie. So, talk to me. I have a bunch of questions with it. So, co-ops and boards of apartments in New York haven't always had a great reputation. They have been considered gatekeepers. They've been discriminatory. There's been a number of, press articles, even recently, of people being denied, purchasing, etc., by the board because of being gay, being trans, being Muslim, being all sorts of different things. So, first of all, what is your experience of how prevalent are those issues? And second of all, has that needle moved in the last 5 years or so?
I think that specifically New York, I mean, you're not allowed to discriminate. That's bottom line. Everybody's supposed to be treated the same way. Now, an organization, it's a private club, so they can set their own rules. They can't discriminate. That's number one. And two, I have never heard, I've read in newspapers that they have, but I haven't actually seen it firsthand.
Okay, so this is the kind of thing that the one time it happens, the media blows up and it makes it sound like this is every day, all the co-ops are doing this. Is that kind of your take on it?
That's my take on it. I mean, if you deny someone, you have to, our advice to boards is to always have a policy on when they can deny members. And in most cases that we see, it's based on financial situations. And that financial situation is that, do they have enough money to actually pay their monthly maintenance and to pay for their mortgage? So they take out the mortgage for their apartment, right? And do they have the resources to pay for that? And that's a very legitimate reason. You want members into this private organization where you have some very set rules that are adhering to all the laws. So you're not discriminating against anyone. You're just saying, okay, you have to have 30% down payment. And if you don't, then we will deny you.
Okay. So does that always happen? Do you have you worked with boards that were like, but no, I want to be able to tell people to go jump in a lake if I want to? What is that a thing? It feels like it is ripe for mean girling, right? And it also feels like that makes great Hollywood. So I totally understand that. It's a way better movie when there's the bitch on the board who is like, wow, but it does feel like it seems like a bastion of Karens as well. So talk to me, is that real, or is it really just a business and they're really just there to protect, the building and the investment?
Yeah, they are there to protect. Are there bad apples? Probably. Are there someone who might qualify, but they say that they didn't qualify for financial reasons because they just don't like whatever kind of person that is? That's possible. It's nothing that I have seen firsthand. I mean, most New Yorkers, they're very inclusive, in my opinion. And I don't think that that is a big issue. I mean, the last big issue that I heard about someone who was denied was Madonna. So she bought a townhouse, or I think she bought 3 townhouses because she couldn't buy a condo, or however it worked. And I think that they were afraid that what I read in the news was that they were afraid that she would hold parties and stuff. But then that's not discriminatory either, unless they told her that it was because she was a woman. But I don't think that that was the concern there.
It's just so fascinating to me. So how did you get into this? How did you, nobody as a kid is like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to work with co-ops. That's not a thing as little kids. So how did this happen?
By accident, like anything else in life, right? So, I forgot to tell everyone. So I'm from Sweden, which is why I have an accent. I moved to New York in 1994. I started working on Wall Street. I was an analyst. I analyzed the numbers or financial statements for large corporations for the purpose of investing my clients' money. During the financial crisis, my husband and I got a letter from the board saying that they were increasing the maintenance again for the 10th time in a row by 5%. Now, this is when there was no inflation. So a 5% increase for 10 years in a row of any cost, doesn't matter what it is shouldn't have to happen. So I said to my husband, enough of this. We're gonna run for the board and we're gonna do something about this. So we got some neighbors involved and they ran for the board. My husband is the board president. They ran for the board and the board, the new board, assigned me to analyze the numbers and see if I could find any savings. Now, I'm good at numbers, but I didn't know how to find savings. So I did what I know from Wall Street, which is benchmarking. I went out, I got financial statements from other buildings to create a benchmark of the various costs. Then I took all the outliers. We made some phone calls, eliminated some services, and got rid of some redundant services, and was able to save the building $340,000 in the first 3 years. When I was out networking, you know how much everybody wants another financial advisor, right?
Yeah.
So instead of introducing myself as a financial advisor, I introduced myself as, hi, I'm Tina Larsson, and I helped my co-op save $340,000. And almost everyone said, can I introduce you to my co-op board? And I said, you know, I think we're onto something here. So we started, yeah. And it's been by referrals, and we work with lots of co-op and condo boards in New York, and we help them save lots of money.
I hope this doesn't come across as dismissive of what you do, but it doesn't sound like it's rocket science. It
No,
sounds like it's just kind of like actually paying attention and actually putting back the human element into these things. And that actually a lot of the things that have been done by larger organizations or what have you to save time and money wound up doing neither. Is that
that's exactly, you got it. And we get a lot of free tips. If any one of the listeners follow me on LinkedIn, we give away free tips all the time. It's just that the buildings are so complicated. There's so many different line items, so many expenses, so many needed repairs, that it just becomes very overwhelming. And don't forget the board members, they're volunteers. They have a full-time job, they have a family, they have hobbies, hopefully. So, and running a building is not something that they have the time or the knowledge about to really know all the different areas. But we'll be happy to give away free tips, and if they want to call Verizon and change their Verizon situation, that's fine with us. But we do the more complex, reducing how much energy they use to reduce their fossil fuel, or eliminate. Nowadays we have to eliminate the fossil fuels and reduce their insurance cost, and heating, water, electricity is a big one, and all the facade repairs, roof replacements, window replacement, or window and elevator replacements.
so so much of that to me, like I hear all of that and I know how complicated zoning and building codes I would be terrified to take that on, right? Like we put in a pool and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I was calling my girlfriends who are like in the property world and I'm like, what do I even ask? I have no idea. Like, how is this a thing? Like, it feels so overwhelming. And that's on a very small scale. I cannot imagine in a large residential building in Manhattan with all of the crap that goes with that, being able to figure out how to put in or fix a freaking elevator that's potentially been there for over a century, is probably registered somewhere as a thing. Like, how do you get that expertise to be able to do it in a way that doesn't make your brain bleed out your ears, and that doesn't wind up costing a fortune in fines from getting tiny missteps wrong?
Well, so there were actually, so here's a funny thing. In New York, there are actually elevator consultants.
I bet. I bet.
That specialize in, they know every single elevator vendor, they know every single system. I mean, they're most of the elevator consultants, they were elevator mechanics once upon a time, and then they grew, and then they decided they didn't want the complaint part, just like us. They wanted the consulting part instead. And so we have a huge network. We have developed a huge network. So my husband is the board president. So we have learned from this building ourselves. That's how we initially started, and that's what we learned from. And then we have just developed the relationships with all the different vendors and all the different professionals in the industry. And over time, we have a very large network of various ways to save money and to do it right. We know where to go to the Department of Building to find out violations and stuff. Yes, the elevator company does that too, but we know here how to navigate the whole system, and it is very complex. So, and replacing elevators, it takes a long time. From start to finish, it's probably 2 years.
So we put in an elevator in my church so that people could access upstairs. And again, it was like a 5-year thing. And we are not a fancy building. We have 1 story that it has to go up. Everybody is on board. There is no like weird zoning, like nobody's personal access to their home was going to be disrupted. And it was still an unspeakable pain in the butt. So like I said, I like the elevators is one specific example, but obviously that's a very small part of what you guys do. Like you do all kinds of other renovations. And so is it the case that actually, if you kind of scratch the surface and look, that there are already hundreds of companies out there that specialize in each one of those things, and you guys just engage with those? Or, what does that look like for everything that's not an elevator that you help with?
That's a great question. So the elevator consultant will make sure that it happens correctly and to code and in the way that the board wants it to happen. But they're less concerned about how much they pay for it.
Right.
And it's their objective, or they make a recommendation and they say, you need to replace. So I have an elevator story, actually. We replaced elevators. The board had a consultant. So the board said, we need to replace the elevators. They were 60 years old or something. So they had decided on this. They hired an elevator consultant who provided 3 bids. The lowest bid out of the 3 was $750,000. We brought in our elevator consultant who said, well, one of the motors is only 10 years old. It was replaced 10 years ago, and elevators have 25 or plus years lifespan. So we removed that from the scope. So the scope was slightly different, for full disclosure. But I mean, the motor is $20,000. It's not an expensive portion of the whole. And we renegotiated with the same vendor, and they came down to $504,000.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes, it is amazing.
And so like, again, I just come back to like, you hear horror stories about things like plumbers, right? Like they always say, if you're bidding for a job and you get 3 bids, you throw out the top and you throw out the bottom and you take the guy in the middle, right? That like the guy at the bottom is just going to do a shit job because he's not charging enough. The guy at the top is like fleecing you, and the guy in the middle is probably reality. I I have found that is true-ish. I tend to lean towards the guy at the top because often there's a reason, like there's some expectation of service that's different, just depending. But again, my scale is this big, Tina, right? It's like I want to put in a new tree in my yard. I'm not gonna pay to do that. Not like something that impacts everything. Do you find that tenants in general for the co-ops that they want to be involved? Do they want to just no, they're just like, I just want it to be fixed. I want to not hear about it. I want to not have to look at it. I don't have like because I could see it could go either way, right? That everybody's got an uncle or like, so
So here's a funny one on that topic.
mhm.
When it comes to changing the color in the hallways or the color to repainting the doors in the hallways or planting the flowers in the flower bed outside of the front of the building. Should we have it white or red or pink or purple? Those are the biggest concerns for anyone living in a homeowners association. How is it going? It's aesthetics. That's how does the lobby look? What the new chair in the lobby, why is it there? When it comes to yes, when it comes to a $1 million facade repair, not a beep.
Seems
Nobody
right.
says anything.
And
And
why would they?
the board normally they say, okay, where do we sign?
How funny. How
Yeah.
funny. That is amazing to me. It just shows that like I think that it's just there's a certain level of scale at which we don't have capacity. And so we're just like, you know what? I'm going to put that in the don't look there pot. But I
I
have
think that's it.
capacity to care that I hate geraniums. And so those geraniums are wrong. And they should have been whatever. I think that's amazing to me. So one of the things I want to talk about is I'm a big Freakonomics fan, huge Freakonomics fan. Stephen Dubner, if you're listening, I'll be a guest anytime. And one of the things that they did recently was there's been a lot of commentary about with the pandemic, our city's dead. And in particular, they did a series about is New York City dead? And they talked about the fact that people were leaving the city and were they really leaving the city or were they just like going to their house in the country for like a couple of months in the pandemic and they're going to come back. And there's a lot of mixed ideas about that and some people will say that this is with remote working conditions, and we were talking before we started recording about like how difficult that can be with multiple people in one small space and no doors to close, etc. That as we become less dependent on geography for what we can do, that the ROI proposition on the cost of a condo in Manhattan goes down and down and down. What is because obviously you have a very different perspective on that and from what you do. What do you see? What do you think? What is your take on that?
So that's a very good point. So I would say that it's probably like anything else. It's 50-50. 50% of the people they think this way and the other one think the other way. We have a lot of friends who have left the city, and most of them it's permanently. They are not coming back, and I don't see them ever coming back. Then there are all the ones who refuse to leave, like my husband.
I was born in Manhattan, and in Manhattan I shall die. I know those Manhattaners as well, absolutely. And I love New York City. If
Yeah.
I could afford to live in New York City like I get to live in Texas, girl, I'd be there in a shot. But like that is, I mean, talk about make it rain money. Like I have a 3,400 square foot house. I cannot even imagine with the pool.
Squeezing it into 1,000 square feet.
Or trying to, no, I'm not interested in squishing. So I would need to have enough money to have 3,400 square feet in Manhattan. And so that like, again, $100 million apartment, right? Like that's gonna be a thing. So, but yeah, so I totally hear you. Like I love Manhattan as well, but at the same time, at some point reality creeps in, right? Like at some point there is just a practicality of all of it. And is that where people are? Are they just feeling burned from having been like having neighbors killed us for the pandemic? Like what is it what you're seeing? What is
I
your
don't, and I don't think, I mean, this is again my personal opinion. My
absolutely
personal opinion is that the pandemic was only the ultimate straw, and our last 8 years of poor leadership is really what has made New York unsafe. And I think that they would have left anyways.
got it. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's so interesting because I know that in the 90s when I was spending a lot of time in Manhattan and totally falling in love with the city, everybody was talking about, "Oh, Manhattan is so safe." Yes, in the 80s we had a dodgy moment, but we're like it's very safe. And I will say, like, do you have to not be an idiot? Yes, quite obviously. But other than that, like I never felt unsafe in Manhattan. Um and every time I have been back subsequently, same thing. Is that is that feeling changing? Like, do you feel like we're going back to the dark time of the 80s where you don't
Yeah.
feel safe around,
Mhm.
walking down the street at night? Because I can't imagine not feeling completely comfortable walking down the street of Manhattan after dark. What would be the point living in Manhattan? You know what I mean?
Yeah. We most of our friends, they do not walk down a dark street in the middle of after dark. Most of our friends stop taking subways. I do not take the subway. I take occasionally the subway, but I used to take subways every day. We don't take subways. Yeah.
That
It
breaks
is.
my heart
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. It's very sad, and hopefully it will change.
What do you
We
think
just,
what do you think I mean, obviously, you're one human being who is not necessarily an expert on all things urban planning, but, like, what do you see is the change and what's needed to fix it?
yeah,
If I gave you a magic crayon and said, "Tina,
yeah,
draw the solution," what would you draw?
I would draw that we need to support the police, and we are very hopeful that the new mayor will do the right thing, which we don't know yet because he just started, but if we're lucky, he will.
Okay.
It can't be worse than the last one, that's for sure.
I mean, like, are we asking
But we had 20 years of really good mayors that really helped New York become the safe New York that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, and hopefully this one turns out good.
That must so hurt your heart, and it sounds like your husband's heart even more that, like,
Yeah.
because New Yorkers take their city so
And
personally, and I
and I
can't
moved here in 94 in the very end tail of it still not being 100% safe.
Mhm. Yep.
And then I saw it just becoming safe. All of a sudden you could take subways at 4 a.m. all by yourself as a woman and you had no problem.
Yep.
And now,
Yep. That's the New York I knew, where I was like, "Ah, screw it, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'll see you later at 2 o'clock in the morning,
yeah,
possibly not entirely sober." Whatever, but, like, never like I said, would you turn down an alleyway in that situation? No, that would be stupid, but, like, walking down, like, the normal sidewalk or what have you, it would not have occurred to me that that was an issue, um,
mhm,
and same
uh,
with, most parts of London, like, just, it is what it is, so
yeah,
well, that makes me a little sad. So we're gonna change the subject now so that I don't get
yes.
too weepy. Um, so talk to me about what does world domination look like for your organization? Like, what is the plan? Where do you go from here? Are you going to take over every co-op in New York and then slowly take over the rest of the world? Are you going to stay in New York and keep it like scalable and, something you can manage? What's the plan?
So the plan is to take over all the buildings in New York. And then the plan is to franchise in the rest of the country.
Okay.
So the franchise plan is planned for starting to, my understanding from our franchise broker is to start, it takes 2 years to set all the processes up to develop a franchise. So we were planning on doing that. 2 years from now was the plan, is the plan.
I can't talk me through that process, because I work with startups all the time, right? I understand series funding. I mean, I understand series funding in terms of like, I understand what that means to the organization. I understand what the financial goal analysis are, etc. Do I know somebody that would I know where to go to get $100 million for an idea? No, Tina, I do not. I work with people who have done that, but I wouldn't personally know how to do it. I would have even less idea where to start with, like, I think I'm going to franchise my good idea. Like, where do you begin? What does that process look like, etc.?
So, and I wouldn't know either. I just happen to know a very good franchise broker, and we have talked about this. He and I were in the same networking group before I switched my networking group, but and he's just a really good guy, and he's very knowledgeable and very successful. So he and I have loosely talked about this, and he's the one who told me it's going to take 2 years. My guess is that he has all the resources, because that's what he does on a daily basis. I mean, he franchises and buys and sells dry cleaners and restaurants and all kinds of businesses.
Okay.
And the only thing that I wanted to know from him was the timeline, because my initial goal a year ago was that this is going to happen 5 years from now. Now it's 4 years from now. And he said it's going to take 2 years to develop.
Okay. And is that it? Like, you just, like, you call your guy, and by the way, I do love that you have an elevator guy and a franchise guy. Like, you're definitely that person, Tina, who's like, I don't care for that.
Oh, I get a window guy too. Oh, and I get a roofer. I get a guy for everything.
So you called your franchise guy, as one does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that most people have in their Rolodex, just so you know. But so you called your franchise guy, and he was like, sure, Tina, 2 years and we're good.
Yep.
And that's it. Like, you just sit back, and next thing you know, you start making money as a franchise owner, or as the owner of a franchise thing. Like, there has to be more. There has to be paperwork. There has to be
I'm sure,
things you have to do, choices you have to make around branding and color schemes, and like hoops to jump and shit to do. Like, it can't just be great, sure, no problem, thanks for the call, and we'll call you in 2 years and you can tell us where to send the check. Like, it can't be that easy.
No, but the 2 years from now that's when we're going to start the process, and then he has to. I'm sure that he's going to call his guys,
and then he's got a guy, and they've got a guy. Everybody's guy is getting a call. So what? Why 2 years did he say? Like, what magical thing happens in 2 years time? Because you guys are operating, you're successful, everybody takes your call because you saved your co-op $350K. So, like, why 2 years?
Just like it took you 5 years to install an elevator. It takes a little planning. It takes a little creating logos, creating branding, creating websites, creating a system, and all of this. But
Okay.
yeah,
so
no,
there are
so
things
we already
going on in the background.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so he's the one who gave me the timeline and said it takes 2 years to develop.
Sure.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
And you gotta rely on your trusted sources, right?
I cannot tell you, I'm sure you have the same problem I do. I hate more than anything when people hire me to come and be an expert and then sit there and argue with me. I'm like, bitches. If you understood recruitment better than I did, you wouldn't be paying me $150 an hour to sit here and explain recruitment to you. What? If you were already good at this, you could have saved yourself the bill. And if you recognize that I'm better at it than you, maybe more listen, less talk. Am I right?
Yeah.
That has to happen with you all the time. That like people are like, but we've been doing this for X number of years. And you're like, shame you didn't
Mhm.
do it well for this. How
Yeah.
do you bite your tongue in those situations? Like, how do you keep from, because I have a face of glass. Everybody knows exactly what I'm thinking. So I just find like the least awful way to say exactly what I'm thinking because there's no point in my trying to hide it. So how do you handle that just like as a human, like in those situations?
So the financial crisis was very bad for me, being that I was in finance, right?
Sure.
And during that time, I learned how to breathe in and breathe out and shut up and stop being so opinionated and being more vulnerable and being more agreeable and all of those things. So something very big happened in my life where I was very scared and it calmed me down and I became a nicer person. So now I try to breathe in and breathe out. And when they say, no, we don't want to save $250,000 on that insurance because the property manager told us not to, then I'll say, okay, there's nothing we can do about it. And I move on.
Do you spend a lot of time doing like yoga and Zen meditation? Like,
I do meditate, but only 5 minutes in the morning, and I bike around the city. I use city bike, and when I bike in the park, it's like a meditation in itself, and but
that's,
I'm not a serious yoga or
no.
meditation person.
I obviously I coach people as part of what I do, and like they're always like, some people are very into mantras and that kind of thing, and I have very low capacity for woo woo anything, at which all of that goes into that camp for me. But I do think that there is a tremendous amount of value in finding a way to give yourself bandwidth to process and unpack the things in our life. And I think that that's part of it, right? That when I know for me that I have way less bandwidth for bullshit when I haven't taken the time to sit with myself and be like, okay, I have taken on all of these people's things for the last week, and I just need to put them all in a place that is not me.
Mhm.
And now I can re-engage with the world from a position of like more positivity. Um, and I think that people underestimate how important that is in business as well as in your personal life. That like I have like 6 clients. Each one of them, I have dozens of candidates that I'm working with, and every single one of them has bullshit that they bring to my table to deal with. And if I carry all of that from thing to thing, like nobody gets a great experience working with me, shall we say. So I think that that would definitely be, I feel like it would be very true for you as well, right? That anytime you have
Yes.
multiple clients, especially when they're very similar, it's very easy to get into that, oh my God, this is the 5th time today I'm having this freaking conversation. Are you kidding me with this? And it's your first time today having it with them. And that's challenging. So apart from your 5 minutes of meditation and your bike rides, how do you keep those engagements positive? Um, how do you keep that fresh every time?
We keep it very personal or personable, and so
Okay.
we give each client our fullest attention, and we start with that we understand. I mean, we understand that they are in some cases lost, in some cases misguided, and they just need our full support. And we often joke and say that we're basically their therapists. So instead, before we were around, boards very often they called their attorney because they had nobody to go to, and the attorney charges $700 an hour or something, and they were calling them for advice, and now they can call us, and it's just so we very often develop a very close, very intimate, if you want to say it that way, relationship with our clients. And we typically don't work, even if we're hired by the entire board, we don't typically work with the entire board on a regular basis. They normally assign one person on the board who is our contact person. So we develop a very deep relationship with that one person, even though the other ones they're involved too. There's so much email correspondence and text correspondence and phone calls.
Yeah.
So for all the 8 board members to hear about every single thing is it's too much for them. So we have one person who is our contact person, and then that person reports back to the rest of the board.
Do you get the out of hours, oh my God phone calls that like, do you get a lot of that? And so how do you keep boundaries with that when that happens? How do you set yourself up to have, clear lines?
And I don't really, I think that setting up the clear lines is a little overrated. Maybe because I don't have kids. Or if you have kids, maybe it's different.
That's interesting.
And so many years ago, I listened to all of these successful business people, and they all said that the reason they were able to be as successful as they are is because they don't separate work from their private life. Their biggest supporters in life or in their business are their friends. And so with all the networking that we do, we pretty much have that relationship with most of our friends. We're friends, and we might be referral partners, and but they're people that we trust and we would refer. So we're friends, but we are business referral partners as well.
So that's so interesting. So my company has a strict policy of we don't work with assholes. And so I turn down business if I don't like you. And I do have to remind my staff sometimes that everybody gets to be an asshole some days. So just because they had a bad day today does not mean we fire them. We just like, if it becomes a pattern, then that's different. Do you have like a similar ethos with regards to business that there are some groups and some potential customers that you're not interested in working with because they're not the kind of people that you want to be friends with?
Yes. I mean, we only want to work with people who are motivated, who are ready to make a change for their community. And if they're not nice, or they're too difficult, or they're not ready to make a change, then why bother hiring us? In most cases, they're nice people. I mean, some are nicer than others, but I mean, I wouldn't want to work with someone who is not a nice person. But then I don't want to be around anyone who is not a nice person.
This is true. Is that something then that you guys will carry over into the franchise as you build that out? That a franchise,
I think we should write that down.
We don't work with assholes. You're welcome to borrow that, by the way. You're fine.
I think that's exactly what we should do.
Tina's like, make a note.
Yes.
And yeah, no, because I agree with you. Like, life is just too short. And
yes,
in my case, like I'm putting people, like I'm messing with people's lives, like how they feed their kids and how they keep a roof over their family's head. And I am not going to do that to send them somewhere that I can't trust to treat them well when they get there. So my take on it is always, I don't work with any client. I will not place people at a client that I would not work for either myself or encourage a close personal friend or family member to work there. And so there are companies that have approached me that have been like, oh, jog on, my friend, jog on. No. And that's true from like a DE&I perspective. Like, it's not just, are they nice? Are they friendly? It's like from a total, supportive and cultural perspective for me. So I totally hear where you're coming from, that like life is way too short to work with people that
Yeah.
you don't like. But
Yeah.
I also think it's very interesting that you intentionally don't set lines, because I think that's one of those pieces of advice that at the moment is so pervasive around self-care, and everything else, that maintaining boundaries. So like I have some really hard boundaries that I set. I don't give out my personal phone number to anybody that I work with. I don't let people add me on Facebook who are associates, no matter how much I like them, from like the business world. I don't have Slack on my phone. God save me from Slack on my phone. I can't even imagine. And I don't have work email on my phone. So if I am not at my desk during work hours, your Slack's gonna wait, bro. And so those are my kind of boundaries around that. I'm s-
Very interesting.
I am shocked that you don't have something so like I'm really like my mind is reeling right now that
No,
like there are
I just
healthy people who don't.
no, I would never. And I mean, to me, number one, I go to buildings all the time. When I go to buildings, or we go to buildings, when I go to a building, I need to get my emails. I cannot not if I'm in a building for an entire day because there are so many different projects going on, I cannot not receive my emails. So that's number one. I want to all of our clients, I want them to have our phone numbers so that they can text us if they need us. We actually had someone, was it Thursday? So Thursday night. So last Thursday, we installed a new intercom. We replaced the old intercom and put in a new intercom to secure the building. The old one wasn't working. And there was a malfunction in one of the wires. Now, we don't install the intercom. It's an intercom specialist who installed the intercom. And midnight, I get texts that 3 people were locked out of the building.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Well,
Yep.
they need to be able to get a hold of me, right?
And so I think that's interesting, because one of the things that like one of my friends and colleagues says to me all the time is, we're not curing cancer. If we don't set up an interview today and it happens tomorrow morning, okay. That might be marginally less convenient for someone, but we are not curing cancer. And I think that in your case, you're not curing cancer, but you are making sure people can literally access their home or can literally sleep at night. So there is a very different kind of standard from that perspective as well. So I hear what you're saying about that.
And let me interrupt you here. So one of the thing is that I spoke with someone the other day who said to me, "Oh, you work during vacation?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, he said, "When I go on vacation, I go on vacation." And I'm like, "Listen, if I want to go on vacation and I check my emails, that means that I can go for a long weekend. How about if I check my emails, let's say I work for 1 hour a day and I can stay for 2 weeks, what would you rather do?" And I much rather work for an hour a day on vacation.
That is very valid. And I say very similar things like, hey, if you, yes, we can go and do what have you, and I'm going to need 2 hours to take a couple of meetings, and then we're good for the rest of the time. So,
Yeah.
but yes, I hear you on that part. So my children, on the other hand, are pretty Nazi about the whole situation. Like they might, mama, it is the
Yes.
weekend. Are you supposed to be working at the weekend, mama? No, I am not. Then why are you at your desk, mama? Because I also order pizza from my desk, boys. Okay. But they are very they're very protective of that time. And I totally I completely get it, because I mean, you understand, when you're self-employed, there's long hours, and then there's self-employed long hours. And I get it that they need more mommy time. So I think you're right, which you originally said, which is that having children is a very different situation because you need to put that time aside. But yes,
Yeah.
but still, my
But
mind
at
is
the
a bit
same
different.
time, if your kids come in and they want to play with you during office hours on a Friday afternoon at 2 p.m., wouldn't you rather spend an hour with them then when they really want you there, and then you work for an hour on Saturday? It's just a question, not judgment, just a
No, 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 no. That is a good question. The problem is, Tina, my dear, that my children are attention whores, and they would like to be in my face. Like one of them actually said to me the other day, "I wish I could be inside your skin to be closer to you." Like you hear about dogs that are Velcro dogs that won't leave their owner the hell alone and like they freak out if they can't see their owner. I have Velcro children and 2 Velcro dogs. So like there is not a moment that they don't want mommy's attention. Yeah. Good theory. For other children, that might work great. For my horrible breed, no. There there would never be a moment that they did not. They would like for me to snuggle them when they go to sleep. They would like for me to then sit and read them books for hours more than I already do. I literally have like their 5 favorite books completely memorized. I don't even need the book anymore. And these are not like, 4-page like Goodnight Moon kind of books. We're talking like books. Yeah, no. Good theory. I wish that my reality supported that theory, Tina. But no.
Okay. Okay.
I can't believe we are already out of time. What have we not talked about? What have I not asked you that I should have done?
I think you haven't, what haven't you asked? Oh, how to contact me, maybe.
All of
So,
that will be in the show notes. So we'll have all of your links and all of your contact details. So we don't, but if there's something special, feel free to
I
talk about that.
I would like, so for any co-op or condo board member who would like some free tools, we have some free tools on our website. There are some policies and procedures. So the policies and procedures that you sign when you start a new job, boards don't have those. And we have a lot of tools that you can download from our website, and we'll be happy to give those away for free. And that's it. Follow me on LinkedIn. Yes.
Awesome. Yes.
Have a
Thank you
great
so much,
one.
Tina. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very nice to speak with you.
You've been listening to Hey, I Want Your Job. For more information on how you can get your own awesome job, visit ONH Consulting at www.onhconsulting.com. We offer incredible resumes, no nonsense career advice, and real world tips for landing a job in today's market. Check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Insta for more insider information. Soon, you'll be hearing us say, I'm Michelle Olivier, and hey, I want your job.